The famous and influential people of Portslade. Portslade has been home to some of England's most famous and influential people, going all the way back to 1066. Here are Portslade's top 5 as voted on our history poll. At number 5 we have a group of people from the 20th century. Although not nationally famous, their work still has an influence to this day. In the 1950s to 1980s, Portslade was a popular place for sports people to live. This included Sussex cricketer Dennis Foreman, who was the first non-white South African to play first-class cricket. John Shepherd played football for Millwall and Brighton, and holds the league record for scoring 4 goals on his debut. In the 1970s, working with Brian Clough, he formed the first Brighton and Hove Albion youth team. In the 1980s, Brighton player and FA Cup finalist Chris Ramsey lived in Portslade. Chris was awarded an MBE in 2019 for his services to diversity in sport. In at number 4, we have another collection of the famous. Thanks to Millionaires Row being situated on Portslade seafront, there have been many 21st century superstars as local residents. These have included Paul McCartney of the Beatles, DJ Norman Cook, singer Adele, writer and actor David Walliams, and presenter Zoe Ball. The 12 seaside villas which form Millionaires Row were built in 1910, and each property has its own private beach. With each home now costing around £3 million, it may be time to change the name to Multi-Millionaires Road. We have a tie at number 3. Harry Blaker was the personal surgeon to Queen Victoria and the private doctor of the royal family when they were staying at the Royal Pavilion. In 1828, Dr. Blaker became the first surgeon to be appointed at the Sussex County Hospital and was one of the founding members of the Royal College of Surgeons. Tied with Mr. Blaker is the talented Andrew Melville. In the 1920s and 30s, he owned the Grand Theatre in Brighton, a venue that regularly hosted 2,000 people in the audience. He rewrote melodramas such as Dracula and Sweeney Todd to great acclaim. He lived in Witchcote House, Portslade, where he died aged just 54. At number 2 is a family empire. The Delaware family were lords of Portslade Manor from 1305 to 1600. They were a wealthy family, and even received an annual grant from Henry VII as a thanks for their support in the War of the Roses. It was the last lord, Thomas West Delaware, in the 1950s, who became governor of Virginia in the American colonies. They liked him so much that the river and state of Delaware was named after him. At number 1 is Portslade's most famous and influential person that you've probably never heard of. Hubert De Verve was Lord of Portslade Manor from 1217 to 1226, but, more importantly, he was Justiciar of England. This is the equivalent of Prime Minister. He was one of the most influential men in England during the reigns of King John and King Henry II. In 1215, the unpopular King John was forced by the English barons to sign the Magna Carta, a charter that limited the power of the king. Hubert De Verve was named as the person who would act on the king's behalf if the king were out of the country. In 1217, De Verve commanded the English fleet that defeated the French at the Battle of Sandwich. In 1227, he was created Earl of Kent. De Verve married 3 times, lastly to Margaret, sister of Alexander, King of the Scots. This made Margaret the rightful heir to the crown of Scotland, although this never came to pass. De Verve's granddaughter went on to marry Robert the Bruce and became Queen of Scotland. De Verve had many adventures before his death in 1243 and was famously immortalised by William Shakespeare in his play The Life and Death of King John.